In the UK, one woman dies by suicide every 4 days after experiencing domestic abuse, yet most of their deaths are never counted as part of the violence they endured. The problem: in the United States, nearly 1 in 2 women and more than 2 in 5 men have reported experiencing intimate partner violence, IPV, at some point in their lifetime. This pervasive issue not only inflicts immediate physical and emotional harm, but also has profound long-term consequences. One of the most alarming outcomes associated with IPV is the increased risk of suicide among survivors. Studies have found that domestic violence survivors have higher than average rates of suicidal thoughts, with as many as 23% of survivors having attempted suicide compared to 3% among those with no prior domestic violence exposure. This stark disparity underscores the critical need for a comprehensive understanding of the link between domestic abuse and suicide. Despite the severity of these findings, suicides linked to domestic abuse often remain underreported and inadequately addressed. This oversight leaves many victims without the necessary support and interventions that could potentially save lives. By delving into the complexities of this issue, we aim to shed light on the factors contributing to the rising incidence of suicides among domestic abuse survivors and explore strategies to enhance protection and support for those at risk. Understanding the link between domestic abuse and suicide. Domestic abuse, also known as intimate partner violence, IPV, encompasses behaviors by a current or former partner or spouse that inflict harm. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, identifies several forms of IPV physical abuse: the intentional use of physical force that can result in injury, such as hitting, kicking, or choking; sexual abuse, any forced or unwanted sexual interaction, including non-contact acts like sexual harassment; psychological aggression, the use of verbal and nonverbal communication with the intent to harm another person mentally or emotionally and to exert control over them; financial abuse, controlling a person's ability to acquire, use, or maintain financial resources, which can severely limit their independence. Prolonged exposure to these abusive behaviors can lead to significant mental health challenges. Victims often experience depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The American Psychiatric Association notes that domestic violence is linked to an increased risk for PTSD, depression, and suicide. The relentless stress, fear, and isolation resulting from ongoing abuse can erode an individual's mental well-being, heightening the risk of suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Increased risk of suicidal thoughts among women experiencing domestic abuse. Women who experience sexual abuse within an intimate relationship are 7 times more likely to attempt suicide than those who haven't. This stark statistic reveals the devastating psychological toll of domestic abuse. The risk intensifies when victims are subjected to multiple forms of abuse: physical, emotional, and sexual, amplifying feelings of despair and hopelessness. Such compounded trauma drastically increases suicidal ideation. Recognizing these heightened risks is essential in shaping effective support systems that address the complex mental health needs of survivors. Recent trends and statistics. Recent reports have unveiled alarming trends in domestic abuse-related fatalities and victimization rates. England and Wales. In the year ending March 31, 2024, over 1/3 of domestic homicides were suicides linked to abusive relationships. Out of 262 domestic abuse-related deaths, 98 were suspected suicides of abuse victims, surpassing the 80 intimate partner homicides recorded during the same period. United States, intimate partner violence, IPV, remains a pervasive issue. Data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, reveal that approximately 41% of women and 26% of men have experienced contact sexual violence, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime, with reported related impacts. It's crucial to recognize that these figures likely represent only the tip of the iceberg, as many instances of domestic abuse go unreported or unrecognized. The stigma associated with victimization, fear of retaliation, and systemic barriers often prevent individuals from seeking help or reporting abuse. Consequently, the actual prevalence of domestic abuse and its devastating outcomes, including suicide, may be significantly higher than current statistics indicate. Case studies highlighting systemic failures. 1. Brittany Fortenberry. Brittany Fortenberry, a former Indiana middle school math teacher, was arrested in 2023 on multiple felony charges, including child seduction and sexual misconduct with minors. Investigators revealed she allegedly groomed students by giving them gifts, writing inappropriate letters, and threatening suicide if they reported the abuse. Despite prior concerns from parents about her behavior, no formal action was taken until a victim came forward. The case exposed failures in school oversight and mandatory reporting protocols. 2. Owen Poirier. In 2022, 15-year-old Owen Poirier, a student at Chazy Rural School in New York, died by suicide after being accused of sexual misconduct by a peer. School administrators interrogated him for hours without notifying his parents or providing legal support. His family later sued the district, citing violations of Owen's rights and a lack of trauma-informed procedures. The tragedy sparked debates about student privacy and due process in school investigations. Alexander McCartney. Alexander McCartney, a 26-year-old from Newry, Northern Ireland, was sentenced to life in prison in 2021 for operating a global sextortion ring. Posing as a woman online, he blackmailed over 300 victims across 30 countries, including a 12-year-old Australian child who died by suicide after McCartney threatened to leak explicit images. The case highlighted gaps in international cybercrime cooperation and the need for stricter social media monitoring. Keena Dawes. Keena Dawes, a 23-year-old British woman, took her own life in 2022 after years of domestic abuse by her partner. In her suicide note, she explicitly blamed him for her death. Prior to her death, Keena had reported abuse to authorities, but no charges were filed. Her family criticized the UK's domestic violence response system for failing to protect vulnerable victims despite clear warnings, identifying systemic gaps. The link between domestic abuse and suicide exposes major failures across legal, law enforcement, and support systems. Legal frameworks. Prosecuting abusers for manslaughter when victims die by suicide is legally complex. In the UK, Keena Dawes' partner was cleared of manslaughter despite her suicide note blaming him. Law enforcement. Authorities often fail to recognize suicides linked to domestic abuse. In 2023, over a third of domestic homicides in England and Wales were suspected suicides of abuse victims, many not treated as such. Support services. Survivors face reduced access to mental health services due to funding cuts, especially in the UK, where vital crisis centers are closing. Public awareness. Many remain unaware of the strong link between abuse and suicide, limiting support and survivor visibility. Closing these gaps requires systemic reform, funding, and education, proposed solutions, and preventative measures. To address the deadly link between domestic abuse and suicide, a coordinated response is essential, spanning legal reform, law enforcement, mental health services, public outreach, and agency collaboration. Enhanced legal measures. UK authorities are considering manslaughter charges for abusers whose coercive behavior drives victims to suicide. This follows cases like Keena Dawes, whose death was directly linked to sustained abuse. Law enforcement training. Training officers to spot suicide risk in domestic abuse cases is critical. Research shows officers with suicide intervention education are more likely to take preventative action. Accessible support services. Nearly 24% of domestic abuse survivors supported by Refuge had suicidal thoughts, revealing a clear need for better access to mental health services. Public awareness campaigns. Educating the public on signs of abuse and suicide risks can drive earlier intervention. Raising awareness of coercive control's psychological toll is especially crucial. Multi-agency collaboration. UK police call for stronger coordination among law enforcement, healthcare, and social services to prevent suicides tied to abuse. Together, these actions offer a clearer path to protecting lives and preventing further tragedies. Final thoughts. The rising number of suicides among domestic abuse victims is not just a tragic outcome, it's a glaring reflection of deep systemic failures. Each life lost signals a missed opportunity for protection, support, and justice. This crisis demands urgent action, from legal reforms that recognize coercive control to properly funded mental health services and widespread education. We all share a responsibility to close the gaps, putting victims at risk. You can be part of the solution. Support local shelters and mental health organizations. Speak out, stay informed, and advocate for policy changes that prioritize the safety and dignity of survivors. Because silence and inaction cost lives. What steps can we, as a society, take to better protect domestic abuse survivors and prevent such tragic outcomes? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your ideas, experiences, or solutions in the comments below. Your voice might just help someone else feel seen, heard, and supported. And don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for our next episode. Innovative Approaches to Supporting Mental Health in Domestic Abuse Survivors, where we explore groundbreaking strategies and community-based solutions that are making a difference.